What up, everybody? Jason from JTV Life. Finally got the Christmas lights up. Year's coming to an end, so time to get back on the horse. We're making these pizza vids, helping y'all out with some of your questions, and eating a lot of pizza in the making. You know, I've made a lot of different pizza doughs, a couple different kinds, simple ones with a little bit more ingredients and steps. But I haven't made one yet for the people out there that don't have a KitchenAid mixer, and that's what we're doing today. We're making some Neapolitan pizza dough from scratch, no mixer, only hand. Now, doing any task by hand can be more tedious than its electronic counterpart. But fortunately, with some technique, we can lighten the load for ourselves and make that hand mixing a little bit easier. So the way we're gonna lighten our load is with a poolish, which is basically kind of a pre-fermented dough. And it's gonna have a large quantity of water, okay? Neapolitan's a little bit of a drier dough. It's about a 60%, which means for every 100 grams of flour, we're gonna have about 60 grams or milliliters of water. And incorporating by hand that much flour into that much water is a little bit tricky. So we're gonna make it easier by taking half of our dough's kind of end quantity, and we're gonna make a poolish with that. And that is gonna be 50-50 water and flour. And that's gonna leave just a little bit of flour for us to have to mix in by hand when we're preparing our dough. First step is gonna be whipping up the poolish. You're gonna want a pretty sizable container from this. That way you're just not splashing all over your kitchen. I love these things. They got lids. They're great for proofing, good for mixing, great for weighing, dishwasher safe. They don't get all funky like Tupperware. I'll have some links in the description to some stuff like this below. This is a 2-liter sort of Lexan restaurant style container. And this is what we're gonna be using. All right, so I just ran the numbers on this recipe. We're going for 500 grams total. Breaks down to around 333 grams of flour and 200 milliliters or grams of water. So we're gonna make a 50-50 poolish, meaning half water, half flour. We're gonna use all of our 200 grams of water and then 200 of our 333 grams of flour. We're also gonna introduce our yeast in this step, and it's gonna sort of be a yeast starter. It's gonna get our yeast really active and ready to ferment this dough properly and help it develop a little bit better flavor than perhaps just shaking it into the dough will get you. So as you can see, there really wasn't much to create in that poolish. We just put 200 grams of flour, 200 milliliters of water in there. I will say, definitely want to use filtered water. The tap water, this hasn't always been a problem. When I lived out in Cali, they must not have treated the water as hard where I came from. But here in Florida, it's a little bit more hard, and I think they definitely crank up the lean at the factory. So I was having rising problems, and I switched to just using the bottled water that I drink every day, and kind of got better results. So that could be a little pro tip if you're having trouble with it rising. For me now, it's just my best practice. Once we mixed together everything, we also added in about half of a container or a little envelope packet of yeast. Really any sort of baker's yeast would work. This one is touted as a pizza one in particular, but trust me, you can make them all work. The other thing we're gonna do to make this easier is we're not gonna be doing a big time batch. This recipe is gonna make enough for 2 pizzas. So I kind of find mixing by hand, you're not gonna be able to get the quantity you would say out of an electric mixer in sort of one go. This is about half of what I normally make in my electric mixer at once. but it'd just be easier to repeat the process and get as much dough as you needed if you are going by hand. So that is one of the limitations, but besides that, you're still gonna get an amazing product at the end. And using these techniques, it's not gonna be quite as hard. Last ingredient for the poolish is time. Just gotta let it sit. 4 to 8 hours. I'm gonna try and let it sit for about 4 on the quicker side of that, because it's not really too cold here, but I mean, if you're somewhere where it's 60 degrees in your house, I'd definitely go the full 8 or maybe even 12. Yesterday I got real busy. I didn't get a chance to finish this at the 4-8 hour mark, so I went 24, and there ain't nothing bad about that. Actually, the longer you let this poolish sort of kind of sit for, the better your pizza is going to come out. It's going to have better flavor, more digestible, and it's going to be a little bit easier for you to work on the pan. So over the last 24 hours, this spent about 8 or 10 on the counter, another 8 or 10 in the fridge, and then I pulled it out about 2.5 hours ago. It's pretty cool in the house. It's about 67 in here right now. Put it on the counter, just gave it a chance to sort of get back up to room temp. I had the last 133 grams of flour measured out here. Also, I have a little bit of extra flour in a bowl just for quick access if I need to dust the counter when we get to that portion. So to get this started, we're just gonna do it inside the container that we have our poolish in, because there's gonna be several kind of rest steps that are gonna rehydrate this flour and also relax some of the glutens, so that way this dough is a little bit easy for us to work. Put about half of our remaining flour in there, and we're just gonna kind of mix it in with our fingers. You can kind of feel that this dough is already kind of sticking to itself. All right, once we got that incorporated, we're just gonna put the rest of the flour in. Just fold the dough on itself a couple times. Now we're simply going to work the dough just by punching it in this bowl. We're going to do that for about 2 minutes. And in between punching, kind of grab it and fold it over, so that way you can get some of that flour that's down at the bottom incorporated. If you find that the dough is starting to stick to your knuckles, kind of like this, just give them a little stamp and some flour. As you approach that 2-minute mark, you're going to feel that dough start to firm up on you. All right, and once it does kind of get firm, it's a ball like this, we're going to go ahead, get it into a ball, and we're going to let this rest on the counter for 10 minutes. Our first 10-minute rest is complete. We're going to go ahead and repeat that 2 minutes of pounding with our fist, sort of rolling it around the bowl. This go round, our goal is to sort of get all of that dough off the container, and so the container is clean, it all pulls away, and that's when we know our dough is ready to move to the counter. Throughout this course, I kind of maybe sprinkle in a little bit of flour here and there to facilitate with that. So we're going to go 2 more minutes of kneading in the bowl with the goal of getting it onto the counter and the bowl clean. So after about 2 minutes of kneading in a bowl again, with a little bit of flour sprinkled in there, we got a pretty cohesive, semi-smooth dough ball. Our container's looking pretty clean. We got most of the dough out of there, so we know we're ready to let this rest. We're going to do 20 minutes this time, and it's going to be on the counter. After that 20 minutes, we'll come back, and we're going to work the dough for probably another 3 to 5, and then we'll let it bulk ferment on the counter. We are coming off from our 20-minute rest. It was actually closer to 25. And we got a pretty nice looking dough ball here. You can see it's sticking to the counter just a little bit. So we'll dust it with some flour, but you really don't want to add too much flour at this point because we don't want to mess up that moisture content ratio. A lot of people ask me in the comments, they have problems where the top of their pizza seems to cook good, but then the bottom doesn't quite cook all the way. And the reason that is because with a high temperature oven, you're going to have a really quick cook time. And when you have a quick cook time, you want to have a low moisture dough, and that's going to help it get nice and crispy and actually cook in that minute to 3 minutes that it's inside of one of these pellet ovens. If we got a higher moisture content dough, then it's going to come out soggy, and it's not going to have enough time to cook on the inside before it goes and burns on the outside. So that's why we want to make our dough from scratch, and that's why we want to make sure we don't go adding too much water or flour throughout the process. You can see right now this dough is really working nice on the counter. I'm just folding it on itself, rolling, kneading it with my fist. We're going to do this for about 5 minutes. Whenever we add flour, I mean, I'm talking it's just a light dusting. That smacking is actually supposed to help some sort of reaction happen in the dough. So you see people doing all that stuff before they get ready to toss it. It's actually a little bit of a reason behind that. And you can see this right here is about 500 grams of dough. So, of course, it's going to get harder and harder the more you make. And I'm just a fan of working smarter, not harder. So I'd rather work a couple small balls of these than a giant ball because it definitely gets harder. All right, our ball is getting nice and smooth. See, when it starts to get like that, you can kind of pull it up and you get that a little bit of that window pane there. That's sort of when we know we are ready. So we're going to go ahead and put this in a ball, and we're going to let it sit on the counter for an hour. After that hour, we'll break it into our 2 small balls, and we'll put it in some containers that are sizable for it to rest in the fridge for another day and a half, and we'll cook this bad boy up. Our dough's been sitting for about an hour, and check it out. Nice and smooth. You know, some people are like, oh, my dough's stuck to the counter. You know, how do I get it up? A dough blade will always help with that. That's how these guys at these pizza shops, that's how they're moving around their dough and stuff. Because we got a lot of air and pockets developed in this dough. And that's kind of what makes a Neapolitan rise the way it does in the oven when it cooks fast. It's all those little air bubbles. So at this point, we're not really trying to jeopardize any of those. We're really just trying to fold the dough upon itself a few times to encapsulate even more of those air pockets. Once we get it kind of looking like this, just going to smooth it out on the counter, get that bottom sealed, much like we did when we created the big ball. Do it again here. Now these balls are ready to get wrapped up, sit in the fridge for a day, and then get taken out and brought back up to room temp for about an hour or two, and they're ready to go in the oven. Now I know there's a few of you guys that are impatient. They're like, what if you cooked it now? So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to leave these on the counter. I'm going to put a little bit of olive oil on them so that way they don't get dry. And probably in another 2-3 hours, we'll throw these in the Bighorn and see how they come out. Got the Bighorn all set up out back, and I gotta tell you, man, it's kind of pitiful, but this is my first time using the Bighorn here in Florida at my new place. But I have used it just at other people's places doing little pizza parties and stuff. But this is kind of the standard Bighorn sort of loadout, I guess, that I recommend. So if y'all are getting into the game, you obviously got your oven. I have a lighter and a torch to get my pellets going. And then I have a little electric fan, and that just helps regulate your temperature and really kind of get it up and running in the beginning. And then also a metal peel for retrieving the pizza. And then you're also going to want to have a wooden one for launching your pizza. I got a video on the launch-in with the different peels, and also I got a video specifically on using the fan. So if you're new to the game, be sure you check those out. Our dough's been sitting on the counter for about 2 hours now, and the balls are risen and looking very smooth. Got the Bighorn all preheated up. These things are nice and fluffy, and we want to keep them fluffy. So we really don't want to work them too much at all, okay? We kind of just want to pull them like this. Keeping that bubble, keeping those bubbles in there. Once we get a little bit more of a kind of a disc shape, just stretch it a little bit. Nice and easy on the counter space. These Neapolitan pizzas, they're not made to be big, gigantic pizzas. So we're not going to be stretching this thing out to 20 inches. This is just about as far as we want to go. So that way we get a nice crispy, airy crust. Now I like using a wood peel for launching. And on that wood peel, put a little bit of semolina. Kind of get one last little stretch as we get ready to put it on our peel. Stretch around the edge where you kind of got a little bit more dough, more material left, and you can help kind of define your crust area with your thumb. Now we'll put our sauce. This is going to be a traditional Neapolitan, just a simple tomato sauce with some fresh mozzarella cheese. And when we get it out of the oven, going to hit it up with just a little bit of fresh basil. Don't want to over sauce, don't want to over cheese. These pizzas aren't really made to have a lot of toppings on them. All right, this bad boy is ready for the oven. All right, I'd say we had about a minute and a half cook time. Got a little charred up. I probably could have turned it a little more, but I was filming. Bottom cooked up. Whoop, slid off my toppings. But I just want to show you that bottom. And even though our top got cooked up nice and quick, we still have very, very nice leoparding on the bottom. I'm going to let it set up for a second and cool off, but I mean, this crust is nice and airy for just being on the counter for a day with that poolish overnight. I think we got a pretty good dough. That is some killer Neapolitan pizza.
Comment, subscribe.